Good evening, Seekers. This is Black Pope Vice. This is the moment a lot of you have been waiting for. If you recall a poll I did about lecture topics that you were looking for. Now, people wanted more about Christ and previous pantheons and their hierarchy of beings and things like that. And I made a video about that already, and that was the most desired. But the other most desired, number 2, was about where we are, what we are. Now, this is a subject that I'm going to have in 3 parts, and the first part is kind of about, it's going to be exclusively about, as far as I can in this freestyle form, manage to limit myself to discuss the physics of where we are. The second is more I don't ever really want to go political or cultural or philosophical when I talk about magic. But I got to in the second one because I got to talk about, I guess, the nature of illusion and intention and things like that. And in many ways, when we talk about where we are, we have to think about, the television and what produces television in Hollywood and the ways that influences our consciousness, our mind, our reality. Now, number 3 is kind of, going to be, I guess, ride the tiger approach to how to react. I mean, obviously, you have an idea what the reaction is. Magic. Since you're watching these videos, but I'll go into more depth, and it'll, in many ways, these videos, as many people who are watching this are like, okay, Black Pope Vice, when are you going to get to the good stuff? When are you going to get to the really interesting stuff? And not to say that the earlier stuff wasn't interesting, but I understand as a magician who had no real teacher. No one ever taught me anything. I never had I never had real advice. I never had a teacher relationship. I had people who would be like, oh yeah, so do you know anything about magic? And be like, oh yeah, well here's a book. And in ways that was useful, it's not like for instance, a book that was really important when I first read a book by Robert Bruce, the person who gave it to me, she didn't really do energy work, so it was not like I could ever really communicate with that person about this subject. Anyway, people are greedy for knowledge, and that's okay because everyone's like, knowledge is power, and it makes a lot of sense if you're into magic. Now, people have different ways of qualifying the level of knowledge and power, and people, want to shoot fireballs and lightning, and that might be possible. And that's, a subject that we're going to get into maybe at some point in this lecture. Maybe not in this video, maybe in a later video. Now, but it's also going to be a subject that comes up later in the argument that, what is it? That I kind of quickly want to mention this, is that, I feel the reason why I have to make these, as much as I like to talk about Christ and as much as I like to talk about what I did talk about Christ. A lot of you come, to magic, from this Christian background, or you're still Christian skeptical or whatever, and it's like, well, here's a great argument that I'm going to just simply put out there, because this kind of relates to, why would you even pay attention to the kinds of things I talk about? So, if you are Catholic, and you pray to angels, I mean, how is that different than the majority of magic rituals already? I mean, sometimes people curse, but there's negative prayers, the attack and stuff, and I'm familiar enough with New Age, Enochian, Jewish stuff that people have come up with ways to get angels to attack people, because they are militant beings who have an idea of truth and justice, and it's not like you can't be like, yo, angels, I'm pissed and I feel I've been wronged. What are you gonna say about it? And what do they don't really demand sacrifice, but they're there. So you as a as a Christian, how much are you going to say those things aren't there, willing to do that? But when you look at extremist Muslims, they reject technology to a certain degree, but they don't reject cars, and they don't reject guns, and they don't reject anything that impedes in military combat. So at the end of the day, it's like, if at some level we begin to figure out to do magic, like offensive magic, like from shooting fire from our hands, and the dead start to arise in a way that's not very Christian. Are there really gonna be Christians saying, it's wrong to be weaponizing the bioelectrical energy in your body to be concentrated enough to produce fire that's capable of incinerating the hungry undead? Which, when you think about, I've seen enough videos of gurus, I've seen one video of a guy projecting heat to cause a fire. I can project enough heat from my palms to feel significant temperature. If someone's done that for years for the sole purpose of trying to train for that, that's crazy. What are we going to be able to do with runestones? What's the next generation going to be like? And with that, I'm going to segue back to the subject of where we are. Now, I like to use little reference points to figure out where we are. Now, we can all make jokes about, how we really know we're really in Kali Yuga, and the simplest, there's, various arguments about it, but Evola has a really good point about the fact we have to debate about morality. Just goes to show the fact that we are really lost. We are obviously lost. The question is, how lost are we? Now, Hindu epics are, in Hindu mythology, basically says it's rises and falls in consciousness. And when we look at various mythologies and systems, they more or less speak about this one way or another. This is greatly imbued in Foucault, this idea of consciousness versus unconsciousness. This relates to quantum physics and the idea of the witness. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos about humans being the quantum witness engines. Now, that is something that kind of relates to this video, and I'm going to talk about it. But that, like, what does that really say, Like, oh, yes, humans are the engines that create reality through the process of witnessing. And without the process, something smart enough to comprehend reality, this engine, it would be entirely hypothetical. Now, does that mean only humans can do that? Does it require a certain level of witnessing? Does it require just the fact there's eyes? Is that why the galaxy is shaped a certain way? You know, I mean, that's even if you believe in space. And, I'm convinced either way. I could talk about it either way. But it also goes to demonstrate how lost we are. This is why we use little focal points to figure out where we are. And these little focal points have to do with our journey. Now, I'm going to come out and just say I'm a solopist. I've suffered from solopism for a long time. Now, I don't really believe in solopism as in personally like, oh, I'm the chosen one or anything like that. Now, I do believe I'm special, but I don't believe I'm like the end-all be-all of things. But I experienced this, and I believe a lot of the reason why has to do with my teleology and about like, how do it has to do with how a writing style I have to learn. And I can't really explain it in any other way because I don't really know how to articulate it in any other way. But I experienced this phenomena, and this teleology has taught me quite a bit about kind of paying attention to little things to figure out where we are. Now, solopism has to relate to the fundamental nature of things. Because if you look far enough in reading books about yogis and stuff, they'll talk about the self. They'll talk about the great self, the supreme witness. And they'll talk about what this means and such. But the nature of things is looking at reality from a way that is beyond you, that is beyond the ego. And I don't know how to describe that, other than just saying it's there. Now, that's not really convincing for anyone who hasn't experienced kind of the state. But I'm like, okay, it's there. Let's talk about it. Base thing. There's this idea of a self that is beyond any other forms, and if you really just kind of pay attention, just to look for it, you'll find it. Now, and there's tons of and if you can't find it easily, there's tons of books by yogis and things about that, about self-realization, like, capital SLEF. It's not lowercase f. That's very important in understanding the differentiation between the two meanings. Now, when we talk about the simulation, we use the phrase the simulation not to say that this reality is false. It's very real. But if reality was created, it probably would be created like other systems that are created. How do we create other systems? Well, we create them with code. They're virtual realities. What is our reality? Atoms are 99 empty space. They're created by conglomerates of laws and forces of energy interacting with each other, intermingling. And for some reason, they converge in a 3D form that produce color for us. There's many things that don't see color. There's many things that see beyond color. There's probably things that see through 3D forms. There's arguments that everything's happening all the time, and the idea of time is really just a kind of an illusion of the human being. There's big science, real science, kind of backing these subjects up. And it doesn't really make sense until you learn, like, oh, yeah, law of magic. It kind of makes sense now. What do we do from here? And, our society won't say anything about this because it's lost. And when it's lost, it's largely evil because it's not willing to address the fact it's lost. I mean, no one's even coming close to addressing its loss. No one's naming the Kali Yuga. I mean, I'm naming the Kali Yuga, but I mean, a lot of people name the Kali Yuga. Now, I only have so much time to do with this footage, but I think I can get this kind of the simulation argument down. Now, we just talk about the physics of things. Little focal points of here and there and things like that of where we are. I remember in high school reading in textbooks about things like there's no such thing as spontaneous generation. When they talked about, the meat, does it produce maggots if it just goes bad and it's actually the maggots a result of flies, and they figured that out. And this is a psyop. This was a psyop to prevent you from looking at a way that things appear in our world, the means of which things appear in our world. I've cleaned enough toilets one day after another to look at them and be like, how did feces get there? How did feces get there? What if entropy just spontaneously creates trash? Like, actions automatically produce consequences on certain things. What do I mean? Here's another example. What are dust bunnies? Dust bunnies are a collection of dead state, most entropotic body parts, dead skin, hair, dirt, rocks, things like that, clumped up together by what force? It's clear that even the most dead, broken, truly chaotic of things has an opportunity to, once it reaches rock bottom, go back up. This not only relates to the Tarot and the 78, this relates to the idea that nothingness is inherently unstable, and when we think about two ends of a polarity, there is transmutation and entropic change. And these are two different ways of things having their nature transmuted, even though I said transmuted there. So we get this idea that there's a sense of duality, which comes back to the Kybalion. The Kybalion is really good. I hope I'm saying that right. Kybalion. It's a book, 7 Hermetic Principles. Relates to the duality in Norse mythology. The Well of Urd. What is the tree Yggdrasil, Throne's evergreen, which is a hallucinogenic, an evergreen tree that produces a hallucinogenic pollen, which is, male sperm. And it's also neurotoxic. It's not just hallucinogenic, it's neurotoxic. And this is the way the Norse uses a metaphor to describe reality. It's an evergreen tree that produces hallucinogenic pollen. The Well of Urd, which it grows out of, has 3 letters. U, R, D. Ur is the shaping rune, and Ur represents, kind of like goes like this. Ur represents the shape of being, the beginning, the apex, the slow decline, and then the final decline. Radhau means rhythm, or the root, or the rhyme something, or the natural process something goes. And Dagaz is the rune of Odin. Now, not only does it represent duality, but it represents a trinity, a synthesis of things. And if you look at Dagas from the perspective of the people who are into runic magic and Odinism, it's very nuanced, and in many ways people can argue that, it's not just a system of three, because you can look at different aspects of the Dagas, In many ways, I would say kind of like, that 9 political alignment is of like lawful good and stuff like that. Superimpose the Dagas over that and just relate to that synthesis, the nature of Dagas and what that implies over something, a grid like that. Dagas can mean many different things depending on where you are looking at the Dagas. Anyway.